What's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and I've got some work I've got to do on the test rig. It's been a while since we've used this, and I figured this is a perfect opportunity to, I start slurring my words here. I haven't been drinking the coolant, I swear. I figured this is an opportunity here to show you kind of how I do my loop maintenance. I've done a video on this before, but I'm still asked this all the time. So I figured what a perfect opportunity to both teach and get some work done. Let's go and talk about how I flush my systems. Now for starters here, we need distilled water and to knock over a bottle. But we use distilled water here at least to get as much of the impurities out as we can. This is not going to be a deep cleaning. A deep cleaning would be taking the whole system apart, flushing stuff like hot water and vinegar and other system cleaners through it. We're not doing that today. So this is more of those do as I say, not as I do things. That would be the most thorough way to do it. But the most time-sensitive way of doing it is we'll just be using distilled water, and I'll show you the process for that. You need some sort of a catch to catch the fluid, and we'll show you what I mean by that again, as I do the demonstration. But if your system has a drain port in it and you put it at the lowest portion of the loop, like I'm always telling you guys, then this process will be a whole lot easier. And you're also going to need some sort of a jumper for your power supply unit, or you can just jump the green and black wire on your 24 pin. Look at a diagram for it. Don't just start plugging things in, especially if you guys have a power supply that has all black cables. Yeah, so these are like $1. And in fact, some companies are now including these with the water cooling parts. And then last but not least, I am using a 3/8 fitting right here, as well as a scrap piece of tubing, which is going to attach right here so that we can drain stuff out of the system. So let's go ahead and get started here. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the plug right here, and do yourself a favor. Make sure that that's closed off before you do that. The easiest way to remember if it's closed or open is if it's perpendicular and you have a siren going. Sirens are important. You gotta have sirens. If the valve handle is perpendicular, then it's closed. If it is parallel, then it is open. That's the easiest way to remember. So we're gonna take our fitting right here. We're just gonna screw that in just like that. We're gonna take our hose. So now what we have here is a way to control our fluid flow. And the other thing we have to do is remove the top to your reservoir. Okay, so flip off the switch to your power supply if it has it. So make sure there's no power going to it yet. Remove your 24 pin from your motherboard and plug in your jumper. Quick note though, this is only going to work if your pump is plugged into a power supply cable like a 4-pin Molex or a SATA power. If it's plugged into a header on the motherboard, this method isn't going to work. You'll have to plug it into an adapter to your power supply. So that's important. I'm going to go ahead and start by draining what's in the reservoir here. So take your hose, put it in the hole. I told you the jokes are going to be real with this one. And then just go ahead and drain whatever will come out. Look at that. I always think it's neat watching the physics involved with this. I mean, look, you have water flowing up over there, right? It's pretty neat. Look at the rings. We'll cap her off again. I guess the coolant doesn't actually look all that bad. It still looks pretty close to the color we put it in there. I'm not taking the coolant out right now because of color change. I'm honestly just taking it out because of maintenance. I mean, we've been running this coolant in here now for, geez, probably close to a year now. So yeah. It was green before that, and then I flushed it, put in white pastel again and made it pink. I like the pink color, but it's time for a change. So what we're gonna do now is, now that that's capped off, we're just gonna fill up our reservoir once again with distilled water. Oops, I just poured a little bit there. All right, now if you've done everything right, when you flip on your power supply, it will cycle the fluid. There we go. So as you can see, it kind of mixed up again. It's a little bit more cloudy. But now this is the part where while it's running, I will just let some of it come out. Keep an eye on your bottle too so you don't overfill it. Also, do not let the level go below the bottom of the reservoir. You don't want to suck air into the pump. And this is the part right here where I pretty much just repeat this process over and over and over until we get clear fluid. Okay, one thing I want to mention here too is this stuff, depending on the fluid that you're using, may not be legal to flush down the toilet or the drain. It may be corrosive to those materials. You need to pay attention to the proper disposal methods for the fluid that you're using. So I'm not giving you any instructions on how to actually dispose of this stuff. That's on you.
A few moments later.
And you can see it's pretty clear by now. The block is clear. The reservoir is looking pretty clear. It looks a little bit cloudy. It's because this res though is kind of old. It needs to be cleaned, and we'll talk about that in a second. But one thing you want to be mindful of too is you want to wipe things like the rim, the threads for the cap. See how there's a little bit of dye left in the cap right there? There's even some dye that works its way down into the threading right here in the reservoir. So now what we're basically going to do is we're going to go ahead and shut it down, and we're going to drain out as much of the fluid as we possibly can, because we now want to disassemble the tubing here to clean all that off. You'll also want to clean off any threading on caps. You can see that there's some, it kind of sounds like after I've had Mexican food. But you want to clean the threads of anything that's going to be touching that you can easily access. So that's why you want to take it apart and just wipe down as much of it as you can, because if you have any of this dye still in there, right, this old fluid, it's going to just add itself to whatever you do next. Kind of like the backup buzzer from that truck is just adding itself to this video. This is also the perfect time too to kind of take a look at your water block. Come over here, because if your water block, you've got a lot of micro channels and stuff in there, and this is not a Supremacy Evo block. I should be actually changing this block right now too, because they sent me another one. But if you have gunk and stuff stuck in here, you see some color, then you're going to want to take it apart and actually clean that out with a soft bristle brush. So I'm going to go ahead, and while I've got it empty, I'm going to take this opportunity now to go ahead and install the right block. Nothing gets me quite as happy as seeing the nice shiny side of a brand new water block. So this is what one of the water blocks actually looked like taken apart, right? It's pretty neat. It's not just a piece of metal, which is what they used to be in the past. They've got all these little micro jets right there. These little micro fins are super thin. I mean, like, give you an idea of how thin they are. You can barely fit that piece that's 1/10 of a millimeter in between them. Right? If I go with the thicker one, which is 1/4 of a millimeter or 0.25, you can see it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit between them. So you can see how fine those are. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix my coolant now. I'm using the Mayhem's X1 Clear Concentrate. This actually makes 2 liters of fluid, which is nice. Normally fluids will dilute into 1 liter. The concentrates will anyway, but this dilutes into 2 liters. So we gotta put 1.75 liters of fluid. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to fill this bottle, which is 1 liter, and now we're going to transfer it into here. This is fascinating video. Riveting. It's what's Jay pour water in a bottle. Now you might be asking yourself, uh-oh, Jay, how are you going to know exactly what's 1 or 3/4 of a liter when there's no markings on the bottle? Easy. We're going to pour this in and then fill it, because this is 0.2, or this is 250 milliliters right here. And now we just fill it the rest of the way. Oh, that smells strong. It smells, ooh. Forgot how much these premixed coolants actually smell. Now we're gonna add a little color to this, but I'm not gonna add it to the bottle. I wanna leave this bottle clear, and we better label it so we don't like pour it into, you know, anything.
We'll drink it.
It smells like it came from Russia. We're gonna add color to this. We'll decide on a color in a second, but we're not gonna add it to here because we want to be able to reuse this and not be stuck with whatever color we choose, right? Plus it would take a lot less dye to add color to our loop than it will be to add it to 2 liters of fluid. So this is the good stuff. We'll set that aside. Nick can be in charge of labeling this afterward. And what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna go ahead and fill up our reservoir. And now we're just gonna do like we did earlier. We're just gonna fill it up. Ooh, look at that go. Bubbles! This loop, I swear, is the easiest loop to fill of any loop I've ever done. Do we want to do like an electric blue? That would go good with the purple light right here.
Like a UV blue, or?
It's UV electric blue. So if we had UV lighting, it would show up. But that's steel blue.
Blue steel. We should do blue steel.
Electric UV blue. It's not blue steel, it's steel blue.
Well, I'm calling it blue steel.
It definitely takes more than 1 drop to make color happen. Yeah. I like the way it all sits on the top though. Ooh, that's a cool looking color.
But we still get teal anyways. Nice.
Well, it's very watered down right now, you know?
Yeah.
It also isn't all mixed in, there's still a lot up here. Look at the block, it's very like crystal-y, I like it. The reservoir always is gonna look darker though than the tubing, because the tubing is going through like the plastic, which kind of lightens it up a little bit. Plus there's just more fluid in the reservoir. So it's up and running, it's nice and quiet. We're running at 24C right now on the CPU. Of course, it's stock voltage right now, 7900X. We'll be overclocking that and seeing what we can get out of it. But when should you guys actually service your loop? So that depends on quite a few factors. It depends on how hot the loop has gotten. As the loop gets hotter, various fluids can break down. The nanofluids don't like to exceed their certain max temperatures. But it depends also to how old it is. I tend to change mine at least once a year. Some say they can go 2 years or more. Once a year is pretty much how I'll do it. Sometimes every 6 months, depending. But there's just so many factors in there. The best thing you can do is really refer to the user's guide for the different coolants that you're using. There's so many different types of coolants on the market. Distilled water too is perfectly fine if you're using something like a biocide in there to keep growth from happening. Typically distilled water though would have to be changed out a little more frequently. Usually about 6 months is when it's ideal to change that out. But there it is, guys. I figured make a video while I'm doing it. You guys are always asking me about loop maintenance, and that's how I do it. So with that said, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.